Welcome to the President's Forum podcast, where we explore innovation in education. This month, we've been focused on student support services, and today's guest is going to get us to the heart of that process. Our guest today is Edson Barton. He's the CEO of U-Science, a leader in aptitude-based career guidance. Edson has spent his entire career focused on helping students discover their natural talents and aligning those talents with real career opportunities. We're going to talk to Edson about the big picture. We're going to talk about what's working and what's not, and where the future of career readiness is headed. Edson, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We've got a lot to talk about, and I know that you have a lot of expertise in this arena. I want to get us started out with a question about working learners. Working learners are so important to the President's Forum. A lot of our institutions are dialed in, very focused on working learners. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience and why it has led you to a focus on working learners?
You bet. Wes, thanks for having us and asking that great question. Because first and foremost, our economy is based on our adult learner population, right? But one of the things that we know about that group is that they have consistently chosen careers that really lead them outside of the world of continuing education, continuing learning, which then makes them really not viable for the jobs of tomorrow or even the jobs of today. So looking at that population and saying, what are they truly talented at? What can they actually do for us? And then get them into those programs actually changes our economy in dramatic ways, which I know, the President's Forum believes in and is all about what they are. But we need to really look at how we're getting people into the right programs. And that working learner population is just critical in this way. There have been programs after program that have guided these people into a new line of work, only to have them drop out of that line and stop out of education because it didn't quite fit who they were still. And now we have kind of, double jeopardy almost. You have they kind of stopped out of college the first time. Now they've stopped out a second time, and they kind of raise up their hands and say, this economy is no longer for me. So we've got to solve that problem.
Well, we see this, like you said, all the time. I mean, frustrated. What am I supposed to do? The ground is shifting under my feet. So from your vantage point, Edson, what do we need to change to help students prepare for the workforce?
Well, first and foremost, let me go down to the foundation, which is understand who you truly are. Too many of us as both adults and young people, we just don't understand who we are. And what that means is, what are we naturally capable of accomplishing in life? And to some degree, unfortunately, our K-12 system has kind of knocked it out of us. And then we perpetuate that in our post-secondary because we're grading everybody. And not that grades are bad, by the way, but what we're doing is we're constantly saying, hey, Wes, thanks for trying. You're not good enough. If we can really look at people's true strengths, which are aptitudes, and guide individuals towards careers and education programs that lead to those careers that are based on those aptitudes, first and foremost, that changes the game for individuals because now they're leaning into their strengths. They're leaning into who they naturally were, and all sorts of good things happen from that because the natural cycle of upward sustainability kind of gets embedded in them.
You bring an interesting point up. It seems like in education, we are constantly hearing messages, at least in my experience, constantly hearing messages of pretty good, or you need to work on this, or just weren't prepared for that test or that paper or something like that. And I understand it depends on the individual, but it seems like the mental advantage of being told, you're really good at this. I don't know how many times students hear that in our current system. I don't know how many times great teachers, I'm sure, utilize that and have positive reinforcement. But what does your experience tell you about positive reinforcement as you pursue a career?
Well, it's paramount actually, especially in the learning stages of your career, right? So if you're told constantly you're not good enough and you're taking courses and things that don't lead to more success, then you will constantly feel like I don't belong in society and or in those big type of jobs that our economy needs right now. But on the other hand, that positive reinforcement, this is psychology 101, but positive reinforcement not only encourages people to do better in what they're doing at the moment, it has a trickle effect that causes greatness beyond that. So tying this into career, right, is really critical.
Have you seen learners say, I had no idea about this, but wow, that was an awesome direction for me to go?
Oh, all the time. And, for me, one of the most gratifying things is literally we'll meet with people and tears are streaming down their face, because they said, look, all my life, I thought that I was destined to just do this. This was my life. And I didn't really feel fulfilled. And then we'll go through the process with them, help them understand better who they are, what their real capabilities are. And they'll just sit there and be amazed. I felt like there was something more for me, but I didn't know what it was. And that makes total sense. Like, especially with adults, because they've had more experience, they're like, it just resonates with them.
Are there some gaps in the economy where you've seen some evidence to say if people only understood that they could do this, we'd have a lot more people interested?
We actually only need about 20% of our economy or of our workers in those fields. We need about 80% in the other areas. But look at where the people have aptitude is their highest fit in a career category: computer and technology, advanced manufacturing, automotive logistics, right? Agriculture and natural sciences, finance, architecture and construction, and flat out engineering. Those actually have about 80% of our population have a great natural capability for those careers, but they're not choosing them. They just don't know. And it's really about exposure. We call it the exposure gap, because what you're exposed to from a very young age, right? If you ask your kindergartner, right, what do you want to do when they grow up? They're going to respond policeman, fireman, actor, right? Those types of jobs, because that's what they've just been taught. That's what they see. That's kind of what they think is cool. Maybe you get an astronaut in there, right? Maybe you get, but one of my favorite quotes of all time was the national vice president of a national bank. And we were talking about this program, and he helped back it for some schools, because he said, you know what? No kid wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a banker someday, right? It just doesn't happen. And he's like, we have some of the best jobs in the world, and we actually are some of the largest employers in the country. But people don't know that. They're not guiding themselves to that. But it turns out that they actually have huge capability. So it's about exposure. And in particular, you see this happen, unfortunately, with women and minority students. They have a larger exposure gap, or at least a belief gap, than others do. And we've got to break that down. Remarkably, this won't surprise anybody, but it's critical for everybody to understand. Women have equal capabilities in every industry. Every industry. And we need all of those women in our economy today.
AI alone is going to force incredible change in the economy. What would you say the road ahead looks like for finding careers for not only working learners, but for everybody? How can we make sure that learners who are displaced, workers who are displaced, are quick to be able to find their pathway forward? How do we approach that?
Yeah, I'll take it from young people's stage first, because if we don't change that, we're not going to change the future, right? And we're just going to continue to perpetuate a bad cycle. So for young people, even starting very, very young, we need to stop kind of asking them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because they don't know, right? The fact is, and so what they do from a very young age is they pigeonhole themselves into certain types of careers without broadening their horizon first. So at a young age, what we need to do is get them exposed to doing things. And that doesn't mean necessarily exposed to careers. It's about exploring your capabilities, building something, trying something. That's where this project-led education really needs to grab hold, because if you're a young person and you've done a project in this and a project in that and a project in this, all of a sudden you realize, hey, look, I can do that. Oh, I can do that too. I may not like it, but I can do it, right? And out of that one thing, I didn't like this part, but I like that part. What we do in education too frequently is we're all about just very specific, very straight education lines. And this is even cropping up in our society, right? Where kids are told, okay, you're a soccer kid, right? Or you're a math kid. And so we put them into camps, and then for the rest of their lives, that's what they do. Instead of what we did when we were younger, which was explore, right? Try the world out, see what we can do. So that exploratory nature of our education needs to be brought back and magnified tenfold, and it will have dramatic results. The next part is, as we're getting into this older group, we have millions and millions of people who need to find new careers.
Yeah, they're retraining.
What they want to know is, how do I maximize who I am, the skills that I already have, and put those to work in a better, higher use? And if you can show me that, then I will walk through walls to get it done. But if you can't show me that and how it applies to me personally, the chances of me dropping out again or stopping out are enormous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Edson, this has been like a very, very timely interview. We're talking this month with, university presidents and other experts about student success and how we can help students succeed. And it seems like this issue it underlies so much of all the other tools that we have for student success.
Yeah, really, the term that I use frequently is career-connected learning. And that works equally well at younger ages, and it works equally well with working adults. Career connection to something personally meaningful to me. It has been proven that if we can get students into those types of programs, every aspect of their life improves. And that's not an overstatement, Wes. That is the truth. Yeah, it just makes such a dramatic difference. The gains in graduation rates, the gains in enrollment rates, the gains in employability post-graduation, just all of these things just increase and improve so dramatically that it is worth the time to spend just that extra time before we enroll a student to actually understand these things better. I think the other piece to that, which ties right to this career-connected learning part, is the kind of credit for prior learning, right? Which I know is on every school's mind that the President's Forum represents.
Yeah, now you're speaking our language.
Yeah, but it's one of those that we all struggle with, right? Because how do you measure it? How do you do it? It is worth the time to figure out.
Absolutely. Well, Edson, thank you for joining us today. I'm sure we can continue this conversation in the future. We're going to want to talk through a lot of these different elements, but when it comes to student success, it's hard to overlook this portion. That is connectivity to interests and to aptitudes and getting students, learners in the right field for their success.
Yeah, Wes, thank you for having me, and don't hesitate to call again.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the President's Forum podcast. It's conversations like this one that remind us that personalized education is going to drastically change the education system. You can learn more about the work that Edson and his team are doing at youscience.com. That's youscience.com. And you can find more resources and conversations like this from the President's Forum at presidentsforum.org. Thanks for tuning in today.